men that were killed in the First World War were the pick of the man of the Wales.
The ridiculous part was that when they were advancing, they would only be making strides of 100 yards at the most, at the cost of thousands of lives.
When you went over the top, it's either you or them.
You were destroying. You were destroying things that had taken centuries to build up.
Words on the Western Front. The experiences of some of the very last trench survivors of Wales, with the voices of Ivor Watkins, Bob Owen, Fred Wall and George Richards, all in their mid to late 90s.
During those days, of course, the belief with everybody was that the only way to solve a problem or to solve things like that was to have a bash at one another. And of course, the build-up at that particular time was the Kaiser's army, the dreadnoughts, the building of the battle fleet. There was obviously something going to come. It was a natural thing. There was quite a furore in Swansea and in Wales, of course, because the 38th Welsh Division had been engaged in that terrible battle at Metz. And the news came through that the Swansea Battalion, the 14th Welsh, had been practically annihilated. And a few of us, I suppose, thought, well, it's about time we did something about it. And I was 18 at the time, 1916, and I volunteered for the army. And there we met discipline in the truest sense of the word. We didn't question why we did this or why we did that. We obeyed orders as they were given to us. Eventually, we had the fixed bayonets. We got to the old adage later on of whip 'em out and whop 'em on, but it was you pulled your bayonet out, held it up, put it on, heard it click, pulled the rifle back to your side, and stood stark still until it became like clockwork. Discipline, long point, short point, jab, and eventually, after months, we went down to the firing range to learn how to use the rifle to shoot. And of course, we were told all sorts of things. Don't pull the trigger, press it, hold it tight.
You have no choice of what you like to be in the army. I was a machine gunner. I could have been a bomber.
And I was a signaller. I had a mile of wire, 4 pigeons, and my D3 telephone, insulation tape, and a pliers, and a safety pin. You might think that's a bit strange. And of course, we're sticking the safety pin in the wire to get the different stations. And of course, then we'd find out where the disc was. That was the breakage disc, we called it.
Eventually, there came the time when we were moved up towards the line. And on the morning of the 31st of July, 1917, very, very early, we moved up to Canal Bank. And from there, at about 3 to half past in the morning, we went over the top to capture what we were told was Pilcombe Ridge, and if possible to go on to the Steenbeck River. This was something new, obviously. We went over under a heavy barrage, and this is where, I spoke early, discipline came into being. No question, we went over. in open order, few paces between each man, through the shallows. It was a hell of a mess because there was heavy bombardment. And during that period, I've often heard it said, about shell shock. One of our party broke down. He started screeching, uncontrolled, but it wasn't cowardice. The man was absolutely shattered. To me, looking back over it, he shouldn't have been in the army at all. There was nothing hard about him. He seemed to be like a jelly that went to pieces. Anyway, he was sent back. Eventually, we reached our objective. We held on there for about 5 or 6 days. Eventually, we got over a bit further. We had to do with pork and beans, McConaughey, dry bread, raw bacon, you name it. We couldn't light a fire, otherwise we'd have been blown to bits. So it was rough living with mud and hard tack.
Passchendaele was the worst place. Passchendaele was the worst place I was ever in.
Oh no, there's nothing as bad as Passchendaele. Nothing at all. Nothing at all as bad as Passchendaele. Yeah. To me, it was a lot of lives thrown away for next to nothing. That's my opinion, and I heard others say the same thing. But whether or not we succeeded is only a supposition, as far as I'm concerned, anyway.
One thing I remember that you could always tell when there were a lot of casualties. Your rations would come up regularly. And if there were casualties, say there were 4 or 5 in a loaf of bread, well, for a day or so, you'd be about 2 or 3 in a loaf until the figures were adjusted.
I always had 4 pigeons in the crate. And then why I was put on those courses, I don't know. It's only me all the time, and you daren't ask why. And anyway, I'd have the pigeons there, and I'd have to meet, when we was holding the line, I'd have to meet the Donars, the dispatch riders. He'd bring me 4 new pigeons up, and I'd go down the line and meet him at 10 o'clock each day, and hand him the empty crate, and then I'd have 4 new pigeons. If you want any message written, it was on what they call rice paper. And you could fold that, and to go there wasn't no bigger than your little finger, and then clip it on a certain way to clip it on the pigeon's leg. And I'd go there to the officer. If he wanted any message, no. I put on one message. You can believe this or not, I don't know. I put on one message. No cigarettes, no chocolate. And then, who brought them, I don't know, but the next bloody day there was cigarettes and chocolates for us. Oh, God. I grew up in Herefordshire, but I eventually came to Wales. I experienced the welcome, but as far as the singing, I didn't hear that until the night before Passchendaele Ridge. We went over the top at Passchendaele Ridge. That night, we was in a marquee, and the marquee was full, and it was there that I heard the singing, the Welshmen singing, and the tears, not only mine, but others that were barely 19 youngsters, the tears was coming down their cheeks. That was the effect of the singing the Welshmen were singing. It was, I'll never forget it. Never. As far as I can remember, we went in 850 strong, and as far as I can remember again, only 200 of us could answer the roll call. Wounded, killed, and missing. It's like if they were singing their heart out. And the next morning, biggest part of those voices were silent for good. And that's what hit me. Talking to the blokes not many minutes before, as you might say, and they were gone.